Hi, my name's Carol Wilcock. I'm here at Dynamic Health Technologies, where I am a lot of the time. And we have situations that come up, and we've had so many people ask questions about this. I thought I would just try to answer your questions. So, a lot of times people will call up, especially this time of year, and they might have the stomach flu or they might have a respiratory congestion, and they're gonna say, I need to cancel my appointment. I don't really want to, but I need to cancel my appointment because I think I might be contagious. Well, if you're contagious, I really don't want you to come here and infect myself and my staff and our space and other people that are here, right? That's reasonable. But we also really want to help you and we have great tools. So I want to be able to share with you what we're doing on this side of the screen on a what we call a focus session. So these are just usually a 1 hour session where we pinpoint something in particular that's stressing you at the time. But before I go into the software of what we're doing, I wanted to try to explain how a remote session works. So let me share my screen. And initially, I want you to see here, I've run a test client, just a John Doe. And and in this process, when you come, this is a test client, so it's not anybody specific. But if it were your name, we enter the demographics here regarding what your situation is at the time, and then we enter your name and your date of birth and your place of birth. Now, I can't go back and show that to you without showing all of my clients, so I'm not going to do that out of respect for everyone. But we ask for your name and your date of birth and your place of birth. And if you think about it, that's a very specific, we call it an energetic signature. Your given name, your place, where you showed up in this world, and where you showed up in this world. And we can even enter the time of birth. So there's very specifics. And I've had people um, go, oh, this whole system is all about, we call them biorhythms. It's all astrology. Well, there is a panel for astrology if you're into that. That's fine. And and there is a component of that, but where I can calculate your biorhythms and see how many days you've been alive and what's climbing and what's falling and all of those things. And we can go into Chinese astrology, medical astrology, all of these things. But the reality is that's not the whole basis of it. There's so much more. So I'm going to close this after we calibrate, after we put in the demographics, we calibrate. Now, calibration when we're doing a remote session is a little bit different because it will sometimes take a little bit longer. So it starts by going through the straps, the head strap, 8 sensors. Oh, zeros, there's nothing there. And then it goes through the wrist straps and the ankle straps, and it's picking up zeros, and it's picking up zeros, and it's trying to find you. Because we have people who are amputees or they're doing a foot bath, so they don't have their ankle straps on. And so it picks up zeros. And then it starts to find you because that energetic signature is very, very unique to you. It's like your personal energetic phone number. And then it will give us a percentage of accuracy. So it'll say 95% successful. Well, I'd take that. Sometimes it's 98%. Sometimes it's low, and there's had one instance where I was running a session with a young man in northern Canada. This was easily 20 years ago. And there was a huge blizzard in between northern Canada and here in Montana. And my calibration was only 72%. And that's the highest I could get it. And I said, this isn't high enough to be accurate, and I don't feel comfortable running the session. So we said the storm's going to pass in a couple days. We waited. It was an awful blizzard. And and we redid it. Calibration was 99%. We ran not a true biofeedback session, by the way. And so it's an energy healing session. It's an energy enhancement system session, not to be confused with our EE system, but it is very similar to prayer or meditation, but in a very, very specific way. So a lot of people who are very skeptical of this, which I understand, I was when I was first exposed to this. I never had any clue that this could be done in person. I thought it was all remote sessions, which was really hard for me to understand, but it worked. It worked for my husband. It worked fantastic, and nothing else had worked for over 10 years, and we didn't change anything else. And so I had a very strong experience with it that I couldn't explain it at the time. Hopefully, I'll shift that a little bit for you today. But I knew that it worked. So because his bone spurs and the issues that he was having with his feet were resolved, and he didn't have foot pain after that. So I thought, well, I don't know. I didn't understand how the magic keyboard worked, but now I'm learning. Now I'm learning. Okay, so on the assumption we can get calibration really nice and high, that's number one. We can see if it's not a good connection. So then we can go to the main matrix and we can run a test. The calibration takes a little bit longer. I had one instance a few years ago where we had an earthquake down in Whitehall, Montana, and my system would not calibrate the whole day. It just couldn't clear out the geopathic stress. So I had to cancel all my clients for the day. So we're not going to run it if we don't have a really good connection, is what I'm trying to say. So from here, we have some specific power settings that we activate when we are doing a remote session. Now, like I said, this isn't true biofeedback. There are some programs that you have to be in the strap for. I can't measure some things without you actually being in the strap. So there's some programs that I cannot use, but about 90% I can use. So that's something to keep in mind just in terms of having a reasonable expectation. Okay, so one of the things that we activate with our power settings is called a quantum indeterminacy field. And I'm going to show you a diagram of what that looks like. We always activate positive consciousness field, shield from any interference, and then we can intensify the quantum indeterminacy field here. So the further away you are, the more I can intensify. So I've worked on people in Egypt, in all over Europe, Spain, South Africa. I haven't had a lot in South America, but for sure Canada, Hawaii. So you can see I can start boosting this quantum indeterminacy field. And then really important is to boost the scalar wave and to activate the scalar wave. So when we activate the scalar wave, something interesting happens. So I'm going to share with you a document that I learned from many of you here in Helena may remember Dan the Waterman, Dan Nelson. So he's a physicist. He's a world-class physicist. Amazing. And I went to his hyperphysics class, and this is clear back in 2018. So I took some notes, and this was really impactful for me personally because I really at that time began to appreciate and really understand quantum indeterminacy fields and scalar wave. So we all know the concept of E equals mc squared, right? Up here. So energy equals mass times velocity, which according to Einstein is the speed of light in a vacuum. Okay. So a lot of people ask me How many sessions will it take before I feel something? I'm like, I don't know. What's your velocity? I don't know your, I don't know that. I don't even know your exact mass, right? So if you took, just to give you an idea, if you took one atom from our body and blew it up to the size of a marble, like the ones I used to play with as a kid, probably twice the size of this. Um, so you have a marble, the nearest electron would be 300 yards to a mile away. And if you condensed us all to our true energetic weight, we would be less than a bacterium. The reality of what Einstein found is that we are energy. That's what we are. And some of us have a little more density. We have more tissue, um, more mass than we do wave, right? Some people are more particulate, he would say. More particle than wave is what Dan would say. And some people are more wave. Ooh, they're hard to keep track of. I feel that. So I want you to imagine a scalar wave, also called the electromagnetic or longitudinal wave, or a Tesla wave, or a Maxwellian wave. So these are all Einstein, Tesla, Maxwell. These are physicists who understood scalar wave. Now, let me also say this. It doesn't mean that the physics that we interface with, that we know and touch and feel, the meat and potatoes medicine that we work in, the physical world that we live in and the physical properties associated with that, called Newtonian physics, right? Newton was a great physicist, but then Einstein. So it doesn't make Newton wrong. It just expands what we have to offer. So, background, these scalar waves are the background quantum mechanic fluctuations that are associated with 0 point energy. So a scalar wave, here I drew it up and down. It is a vertical longitudinal wave. Now, this up here is a very slow speed. So negative c is negative speed, very, very slow speed. So what happens when you take water and you take away the speed? It turns to ice, right? It turns into a solid state. What happens if you add more energy to it? It goes back into a liquid and then into a gas. So the slower the speed, the more dense. So a slow speed or as a solid is something that we can measure, something we can touch, something we can feel. This is where our senses interface with the world around us. That what makes it so I can knock on this desk, right? Or drink my water. All these things that we have to interface with happen at a very slow speed. But when you activate the scalar wave, you have a very fast speed. So imagine these two little circles here. The small circle, which is like on a whiteboard what Dan was drawing. So it's this very solid. So think of it as solid. On the opposite side of slow speed is very fast speed. And the circle is still there, but now it's empty. So in this situation, at a slow speed, negative c on the top half, there is parity, which is yin and yang, right? There's an opposite in things. There's time that we can measure. There's energy, like heat. There's gravity. There's entropy. So this space. So we have these things that we measure in the millimeters and kilometers and miles and ounces and hours. So we have this physical component that's slow enough that we can manage our lives, which I'm truly grateful for. Now, when you activate scalar wave, there's no parity because it's so fast here. Now we are at a fast speed. Now there's no parity. There's no time. There's no energy, right? Doesn't get hot or cold. No gravity. Yay. no entropy, no space. It doesn't matter how far away you are or how close you are. The only thing I will say in terms of our system is that when we are doing a remote session, we ask you to not be in a car, but especially not in an airplane. I had somebody in that was trying to get home. She was not feeling great. She was feeling pretty compromised, stuck in a huge, gigantic international airport, which she said had not been cleaned in at least 20 years. She was just mortified to be there. And she's like, I got to get out of here. But in the meantime, she wanted us to run an immune boosting energy healing session. And so I said, absolutely. So I went to calibrate and it wouldn't calibrate. It wouldn't find her. And I couldn't run the test and it just circled around, nothing. And so I finally just left her a message, a text message. Tried to call her, nobody answered. Well, she was in an airplane. She got on a last minute flight home, and so she was just like, "Oh, good, I'll take it." And she didn't have time to even text me or let me know that she was in the air. But we knew that I'm like, I don't know where you are, what you're doing, but I've got nothing. I can't help you right now. So you can be at home. Your kids can be you can be at school. I worked on my kids while they were at school, ran super learning programs and ran emotional balancing programs so they'd come home from school a little bit happier. Um, my kids would call and ask, they still call and ask for me to run sessions for them. And only one of them lives here. So they've kind of grown up around this. All right. So I hope that that answers the best that I can. I'm not a physicist, but I love physics and I love a lot of physicists that are fantastic human beings. And I was really grateful to Dan that helped me understand what scalar waves are, these electromagnetic longitudinal, right? Tesla, because it's such a common word now, and because we use these waves in our cell phones and in satellites. There's so many different technologies that we use and a longitudinal wave that it's more understandable now than ever before. And we do a lot of things remote that we didn't ever do before. So this is my best attempt. Now, I found this piece on the quantum indeterminacy field. So it's very similar. It's the world of possibilities. It's indeterminate. It's not a fixed time space block. It's universal consciousness, it's space time, it is flexible. So when I boost the quantum indeterminacy field, I'm boosting the world of possibilities. That's the way that I explain it best. And that's the best way I know how to explain it. So there's some really great deep dives in the world of physics that you can look at to understand more about quantum indeterminacy fields and scalar wave. But those are the two primary sources or changes that we use that are really important in allowing for us to work on a remote situation. So in this case, if you haven't already seen the video on how the device works and what some of the programs are, basically, once we have, say somebody, I'm going to just type in sinusitis or a sinus and just see what this is the main matrix. It's thousands and thousands of line items long. We're up close to 15,000 now. So it takes these 15,000, right, and scores them against your normal electrical pattern. What's your minimum, your maximum, calculates the average, and then it runs the scan based on that. Now, remember, it's still working remotely, right? And so I can, you just have to keep that in mind. But I'm still at 90+% accuracy, 95% accuracy. So I can do an individual reaction and see how much stress this rhinopneumonitis. That is not 100% not a diagnosis. Okay. This was written by a physician for physicians. I don't know how much tissue in your nose is irritated. This shows up on the chronic side. That means it's been there for a while. And so I can test and see how much stress, electric stress, right? I can test for resonance, reaction, coherence. Overall, I can test for your voltage, amperage, resistance, how well you're hydrating, how well your cells are hydrating, rather, and how well your body's utilizing oxygen, right? But I can't tell how much tissue is involved. Nobody can. In this program, it is impossible to see tissue volume. And that's why you need an x-ray or an ultrasound or an MRI or a lab test, right? So I can see a lot of times I tell people I can see why educationally your body is stressed with something, but I can't see how much, which is where diagnostics really are important. So here I'm just going to take a little shortcut and let's just see what's going on with sinus. So this is just looking at sinuses overall. So viruses is pretty high, but food poisoning, remember this is a test client, so this is just a scenario, and the device will allow us to create these fictitious situations. So we might have some parasite, which could also be the amoeba, which is prolific in Montana water. We see amoeba a lot. What else is going on? Oh, allergy is higher than virus. So we might start looking at what are those possibilities. And then also amalgam is fairly high, insecticide, but heavy metals and radiation on the chronic side. So if they're going to be sick, it might be because they have compromised tissue in terms of toxicity with radiation and heavy metals. These two stick together. And if that's an issue, then that's why the tissue was compromised in the first place. So we need to look at where are you getting exposed to heavy metals? Where are you getting exposed to radiation? And we have programs that can look at all of those different things. So in a situation like this, depending on their hydration, you might be able to run a detox, might have them just lavage their sinuses first, right? See if that's something that they know how to do, something we want to empower you to do things at home on your own that'll keep you healthy. It might take a while. A lot of times in a situation like that, I've had people with mold or heavy metals or something in their sinuses, and I'll send them to a naturopath for a compounding solution where they can lavage their sinuses to get the mold really thoroughly, or the fungus or the toxins out of their sinuses. So we make a lot of referrals. We send people out for the things that you might need. So in this case, this is just chronic sinus, right? So it might be that there's a cranial misalignment. So we have cranial sacral programs, or we can look at specific cranial bones. There's programs to do that. They might need a chiropractic adjustment. They might need a cranial sacral adjustment. A lot of times, remember, E equals MC squared. There's no space, there's no time, and there's no resistance really. So we can run the cranial sacral program, and maybe we spend a little time working especially on intracranial congestion and the cranial base because occiput showed up over here. So we have a lot of different places that we can work. I definitely would come here and run an immune boost, right? Yeah, that's a big deal. And I would run sinuses. So we can run a stem cell program and then we can direct those stem cells here. We can do that on a remote session. So even if you're far away, you're on vacation, you can't come in, we love to see you. There's a reason why we have windows and walls and carpet, and we want to see you. But for those of you who can't come in, or for those of you who understand the value of really great training, We love to work on you. We just really do. And so, however we can support you at home or at play or at work or here in the chair, it's really an honor to do that. So in this case, I would come and look for opportunities to boost your immune system. So I just might let this run for a while, an immunoneural system. And are there emotions that are tied up with it? Sometimes there are. So we can always do a super conscious choice and look for why are you susceptible? Maybe greed, maybe not, who knows, right? So we can look at different emotions and see what's going on that emotional terrain that allows for this susceptibility. It's like, no, I'm always having these same symptoms over and over again. Well, then you need more than a focus session, honestly. But if you just came down with something and you need some balancing, we're happy to do that. And there are literally 1,000 programs here. I just wanted you to be able to see a small course nutrition programs. Um, I just wanted you to see a small sample of how we can support you doing a focus session, doing a remote session. A focus session really just means that you have an issue. Say you sprained an ankle, and so now we're going to work on pain and injury repair. Or your grandson got tackled even though it's basketball season. Sometimes they hit those wood floors and it is particularly brutal. So we can go to a sports program and we can look at sports injuries, and they can be at the hospital, they can be at home recovering, and we can work on that fracture or that concussion, or if it's an infections trauma. So we usually end up running infectious trauma with any type of infection. Are there other traumas associated with it? So a sprained ankle, those kind of things are really great places. If you can come in, of course, come in. But I've had a client who was traveling and sprained her ankle, and we were able to help her here through this. And it's like some people are like, well, I can't believe you can do that. I'm like, well, would it be okay if I prayed for your left ankle for like an hour? Could I do that? They're like, that'd be awesome. I'm like, thank you. So, so if you, depending on your belief system and what fits for you, but the reality is that the world is becoming a very small place, and we are all very, very connected. And using tools that can tap into that and get a reaction in this grand world that we live in is amazing, and it's awesome. And I appreciate skeptics out there. I was one. I understand. It doesn't make any sense in the slow parody world that we live in. But if you can branch out just a little tiny bit and imagine that your cell phone is working at a very fast speed, which is why you can call somebody on the other side of the planet very quickly. Those are because of longitudinal waves. Those are because of electromagnetic waves. Those are scalar waves. And they're part of our world all the time. So with that, I'm going to stop my share because I could go on forever, but I'm not going to. I hope that explains a little bit for you. And I hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to being able to help you. My staff loves working with you. We love working together. We love working with you. So if we can help you with a focus session or a remote session, we're glad to do that. You have a great, great day. Thanks.